So I've updated all of that information. Excellent. So now I'm going to go into my app and I can see already this has our to-dos. I'm going to keep the to-do infrastructure in case you want to use that. But I want to add my new menu for our boards. So I'm going to clone our to-dos. I'm going to call it boards. It's already formatted like it's selected, so I need to remove that. And then I need to clone the flow that actually does the action. When I click to-dos, it opens this page into this container. To do this, right before I do that, I'm going to add a new page, which will be our app page, all boards. So this will be the page that I end up opening. So similar like our task list here, I'm going to open my boards whenever I click boards into this container. So what I want to do is see that I have this open to-dos flow here. I want to just clone that. So open to-dos is going to be open board. I'm going to choose my app all boards page to open into this container on this page. I'm going to run the deselect all menu items. So this is what removes the style class before it removes the selected style class from all the menus before I then re-add the style class selected to the menu that was actually selected. So I do need to clone that once though and add an additional action so that it removes it from the new boards menu item I put there. And then we see that on my board here, we have select menu to-dos. And so I need to actually remove that, but I need to duplicate it as well. So let me go to select menu to-dos, duplicate it. And I need to add the style class, in this case, to boards. So now it's going to add the selected style class to board. I'm going to try to build most of this without previewing, but I do want to be able to give you some examples as I build to show you, one, the live updates in Builder, but two, show you the visual side of some of the things I'm talking about as I do it. So I'm going to go ahead and sign up right here. So we've got to-dos. And you can see I've got boards right here. Oh, we didn't add the click event on it. On click is when I want to do open board. And now that'll be updated right away. So now the board page opened here. We didn't get that correctly assigned because I didn't nest my new select boards. So I'm not going to go through this debug process for every single time, but now that I put that there, when I click boards, it'll select it. So all good there. We'll certainly come back to this page, I think, by the end, but let's focus on our boards page. So the first page I'm going to have here, and what you're going to see is actually a series of nested pages inside of this, because we're going to be using our repeating list process to piece all this together to create that app experience that we're looking for. I will end up probably reusing our prompts for when we create a new thing for our edit that item prompts by reusing this format. However, I don't think I'm going to reuse anything else in this. Maybe I will reuse this just because I kind of like the app page task list row. I'm going to do this. This is going to be the idea row. I'll come back to this. This is going to sling all the way to the right here. And you'll see when I use this in a second. But this page is our board page. And so we're going to select a board on this page. I'm going to use a select menu right here. So that select menu, the select menu is going to be driven off of data. And so I'm going to tie it to boards, the boards database. I'm going to get all the fields. I don't have to filter this because, again, on the boards collection, it's always only going to filter by the current user's owned boards. I don't have to worry about filtering because of that. So what I am going to do is go ahead and clarify the display name that I actually want is the board name. So when they see it, it's going to feel just like the name of the board, but the actual value is the ID. And that's going to allow me to use that ID to take certain actions off of it. I also want a default value of just select the board that has a display name of that, but no value. And then I also want a create a new board option. So if they select that, I can create a new board. So that is going to happen right there. And what is going to happen when I actually open a board is I'm going to open a app page board and open this board into a component on this page. So this page will be open into it based off the board that was selected. As I build, just for visual purposes, I'm going to automatically have this here, but when I get done building, I'm actually not going to have this preloaded because this is going to load in after the user selects a board. So now let's go to our board page. Our board page, right at the top, we want a board heading. Let's do a heading 2. Right below that, we want a text box description. And although that's what I'm writing here, these are actually going to be data bound from the board that I'm putting into the page. The board record I put into the page is what's going to drive the actual values of these two things here. Board description. So that'll look good for us. And then beneath this, I want to display all of the ideas on this board. The ideas are going to look like this right here. And I also am going to need some actions buttons on this board. First, I'm going to have let's do a regular button. This button is going to add idea of what you can do. This button is going to add a category. And finally, I'm going to need to have a edit category. And I realized I just added the name. So add idea button or add category. I want to make sure this is at the top actually. I think, you know what I did? Add category is labeled differently. So let's fix that. Add idea, add category, edit category. Put that right here. There we go. So now we have these buttons right here. My add idea is probably going to be the most prominent. And so I know I've got the blue that I use. Let me see what button class is already pre-built. Button, page action button. So it goes blue, but it puts it over here on the right. And so I really just want to get that white color and the blue. So I'm going to grab this button color from that. And then in line on this, I'm going to do background color for that blue. And I'll do color, which changes text to white. There we go. So add ideas, prompt, and then add category, edit categories are also available there. And just to give these a little bit of shape, I'm going to put all of these buttons in a div. Buttons are automatically going to go side by side, but I do want to give this a little bit of space. Use grid column gap and do 1 EM. Actually, I need to do a display of flex or grid for that to work, and you'll see that little space there. So now I've got my buttons there, and my repeating list element is here. And we'll see if I end up keep using this, but I am going to go ahead and use this page in my repeating list element. So when I use a repeating list, what I'm doing is I'm setting data into it. And it's JSON data, so every single value in that database is going to get a row created for it. So my app page idea row is going to be added here. There's 3 examples by default in the studio. You could change that if you wanted to, but that's just what we initially do. And this is going to be driven from the ideas collection. So all of the ideas will show up, but I am going to filter this request by the board name or the board ID rather, which is from the current record field value. So when I design this and I select a new board, I'm going to actually open that board record into this page. So anytime I'm referring to a board on this page, I'm going to use the current record field value because it's the current record of the board on this page. So the current record on this is board. I'm going to pull the ID to filter this request. So all the ideas that come in will be all the ideas that are supposed to be on this board specific. So I've got all of that. And one thing I do want to do is on my ideas, I want to rank them so that the score is set up so that the highest score is at the top. So I'm going to do sort method descending. And so now what's going to happen is every time the data refreshes, it's going to put the ideas with the highest total score right at the top. So I've got that done right there. Now I need to design my idea page a little bit. So my ideas, I don't need the checkbox like my tasks did, so I can delete that. I have my idea name and then description. I'm going to put those in their own div right here. You can see that made a difference because of the size of this field. But this is going to, so these are going to be stacked right here together. I'm going to give this div a width. We'll say 200 pixels. I want it to be consistent because I want it to, when the ideas stack on top of each other, I don't want varied widths, but I want enough to see some of the text. So we'll play around with that width as we go through this. So I've got my name. I need to update where this name is going to come from. So it's going to be ideas. It's going to be the idea name. The description is also going to be ideas and the idea description. And then on this, I do want the ability to edit a idea. So I'm going to keep that right there. Actually, I'm going to put this at the bottom of this as well. So there'll be a little edit button that I can see right beneath the idea name. We'll see where I keep that. Maybe I even end up doing this before it if I want to. We'll play around with it. Now, the other thing that is going to be on this page is all of the, actually, I don't need that div, delete that. Is what's going to be on this page is going to be all of the categories that are ranking and scoring this. So what I want to do is insert an element on this page of a repeating list. So right here is the repeating list. I'm going to insert another page over to the right here, which is actually going to be the category idea relationship score. And so this is going to be, most importantly, just a text box where I can add the value of that score. So let me just go copy a text box. Actually, I have a copy. I'm going to just do body open text input, add a text input right there. And actually, I'm going to put this in a div. Technically, this page body will work the same as a div. I just like to have a div that I can visualize right here as well. So I've got my div and text input, but I also want a label. So I'm going to add a missed. I'm going to add a text paragraph right here on top. So it becomes a label of the category that this is associated with. So from field, categories, category name. Actually, this is not going to be the categories collection. So I can't do data binding because that's not going to be the record that's here. The record that's actually going to be here is our score category relationship collection. So the text input will be that score. I'm going to remove the placeholder text. And I want this to be a controlled width. So let's set a width 100 for now. And what's going to happen is this page will automatically go down to it. I see a little margin at the top here. That's done because text automatically has some margin unless you take it away. So I'm going to go margin 0. So you can see that taken away. I am going to add on, to give it some space, I'm going to add some space and padding to the div itself that everything is in so that that will space it out from the sides. And then the last option that you're going to see is I want to center this content and give a little space to that. So I'm going to do a grid row gap of 0.5 EM. And to do that, to make that work, I need to make sure I'm actually using layout display of grid. Then I'm going to apply it. I want that text to be centered. So text align is our input for that. Center. And so the last thing I can do on this page for now is actually when I load the page, I want to set, so when I load a page, this automatically happens, and page binding is the flow and specifically the action where whenever you data bind something through the data in Builder, the page binding individual action type is what binds all the data to the specific fields that you've asked it to. But another way to set data is just through actions for individual actions. And because I'm doing a referenced collection in this case, I will have to use a set element value action as a part of this flow. And I'm going to set that category name right there. And I'm going to set it from the data collection of categories. I'm just going to return the category name. And I'm going to filter the collection by ID. And the ID is going to come from the relationship collection. So the current record value is the overlap score of, it's the relationship collection between ID and category. And I'm going to pull the category relationship value to filter the ID, meaning I'm only going to get this category name back for the specific category I want. And then the final detail I want is I don't want JSON array. I want comma separated. And when you get a comma separated value, but you just get one value as a part of that pull, that means I'm just going to have that value with no commas. So I'm setting the data from the correlated category into this right here. So I've got that already set. And then by using cache, if I've already done this pull once and the data is locally on the browser, it's not going to require an API call to do that because Builder will automatically take care of it. So I've got all that taken care of right here. I do want my text just to be also aligned in the text box. So I'm going to do text align center there. So if I choose that, it'll be right there. So what I want in this repeating list on the idea row is a list of all of the categories related to the idea. And so I'm just going to drag the list page is going to be category idea relationship score. Category idea relationship score. So I can see it pops in right there. I actually want this left to right, not stacked. So on my repeating list element, I'm going to do a layout display of flex, which put them side by side. And I am going to do a grid column gap of 0.5 EM. We'll do that to start, and we'll see how this looks spacing wise once we get in there. And so that'll look good, I think. And so what we're going to see is on this board page, every idea will pop up and we'll see all the categories for every idea that we have. Now we need to make sure that all of our ideas, aesthetically, ideally, our stack of categories here will all be the same category in order. So a way to control for that is making sure we have an order to specifically show the categories that we want in the same order on every single idea. To do that, what we would like to do is set a default on the category as well as on the row so that when we display it, or on the category as well as in the category relationship, so that we can order these consistently across all the different ideas for whenever we create an idea or add a new category. So to do that, I'm going to, on the repeating list of this, I'm going to also give it a sort, but I actually need to create that record first. So I'm going to go to the data collection, go to my score category relationship, and give this a new field called order. I'll make it number. So I'm going to do order and from that relationship collection. And so now I'll display it in that specific order. And later on, you'll see I'm going to create the flow so that it's always going to be the same order numbers for all of the records, meaning it'll always display in the order that I want to. And it'll look organized like a table on the actual end result. So I've got my idea right here, all this is set. I've got my categories. I need to tie this to data. So I did some of this work already, but do need to tie it to this collection. I'm going to get all fields. And in each row, again, this is the idea row. So the current record value of this row, even on this page, there'll be a bunch of these little pages inside of this one. Each current record value on this page is going to be the idea itself. So I'm going to filter the relationship collection by idea, the relationship idea field. And I'm going to use current record field value of ideas and the idea's ID to define that relationship and only get these scores that are supposed to show up on this value right here. The final thing I want to do is on these idea rows, I want to display the total score. So I'm going to clone this whole look of the categories. I'm going to paste it right here. So it'll show up on this row. Call it total. And I'm not actually going to edit that value directly. So I'm going to delete the text input. And I'm going to put a like a H3. So just a bigger than, that might even be too big. Let's not H3, let's do H4. There you go, a little bit smaller. And this is just going to be a number. So I'm going to start with 0, but it's in the end, what we're going to create is just whenever we update a value here, we're going to display the total score here. And let's go ahead and do that. And so the way that we want this to work is that when I change a value here, I want to go through the process of updating the score of that idea and then updating this value that I see visibly on the page. And remember, we're going to also resort the repeating list element immediately. So if you get an idea that's ranked higher, it'll shoot up the board. We could certainly adjust that experience later on if we wanted to, but for now, we're going to go ahead and go with that. So this value of this field is going to be from the ideas collection. It's going to be from the idea score. So we've got that, but now we need to know when I change the value of a category on this idea row, it's going to update the score. So there's going to be two things I need to do there. I need to have a flow on the idea page, update idea score total. And this is going to add all the values on this page together to get a new total score to input. And so the way I want to do that is I want to do a set variable first. This variable is going to be set to the current page, which is just going to be each individual app row page. A new total score is the name. It's going to be from a specific value. What we're going to do is get this from an element value. The element itself is the repeating list. So it's the full set of data right here is where I'm going to get this data. So even though there's going to be a bunch of records, it's going to get it from the group of data entirely, not just an individual record. I'm going to get it from data. Data and value are usually interchangeable in most scenarios, but data is just all the data that exists in it. And it's all of the variable elements or variable values rather on the page. So an important thing to know is that every time you create a new row inside of a repeating list, there's a variable that exists for every variable that you set into it, or there's a variable for every value that you set into it. So if you did it from a builder data collection, every single thing that you set in, so when you choose get all fields for a record, so when we do like this data binding and we do get all fields, all of these exist as variables in the field. And it's important to know you can turn it on so that you use field names so that these actual names that you see here are the actual values that will show up for the names variables. However, it's usually better practice to use our ID rows instead. And so what I want to do is whenever I run that flow, I actually want to sum up the total of all of the variables associated with the text input. And so there's actually one other thing I have to run first. When I edit this field here, I need to run I'll do one thing, update value of field, update value of rating. I'm going to nest the autosave flow. So autosave automatically, whatever element this is tied to, if it's data bound, Builder recognizes that and it will just automatically reset that data to the source that it came from for you. So you don't have to do anything. It just auto saves it for you. But what I need to do when I do that is actually run a flow on this page to re-update the page or re-update the total value automatically. And so I'm going to add a run flow on page action. I'm going to put a wait because I need this to be done first. So I'm going to run flow on the parent page, which is the app page idea row. It's important to know that I'm choosing parent page specifically here because it's going to target the row version that is the parent to the element that I'm on right now. If I were to just choose this page in general, it's going to go run it on every single idea that's going to pop up for me instead of the individual one that I'm targeting. So I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to narrow it down by saying specifically the parent page. And the action I want to run, the flow I want to run is the update total, the idea score total. So let me go back to that flow here. And I actually I don't think I need to update a variable first. I can just do, I want to update a data record. I want to update the ideas collection. And important thing to know is you have to ideally always match an ID to the ID of the record that you want to update. That's how Builder knows this is the ID you want to update in this collection. Now we'll show later on that you'll do bulk uploads where we actually want to have an ID of 0 to do a bulk upload of a JSON array of data. In this case, we're just going to key the ID from the current record idea value on this page, ideas, ID. So current ID. So this is identifying this is the idea that we want to update. Oftentimes, if there is a current record value, you technically don't need that in Builder, but it's important. And we're actually even going to add a field for you to identify it directly soon here. So by the time that you watch this video, you might see that right there. So I'm keying the specific idea I want to update there. And I know what I want to update is the idea score. And the new value I want to get is actually in a pretty unique way. So I want to get it from an element value, like we said with the variable earlier. I want to get it from an element value, get from the data of that repeating list element. But I actually want a total, a sum total of a specific record in this repeating list stuff. And the actual variable value that I want to get the total of, let's go to this relationship record, is this score right here. That I want to get these all added together just from that mini set on the page. And so I'm going to get field ID right there. And I'm going to do add a path and do sum. And click on it. I'm going to add that variable. So what's going to happen is it's going to go look at this data, get all of the versions of this on the page, put it all together and spit out the total value of all of them. And so this is going to update this idea with that total for me already. So that'll be all I need to do. And I don't need this set variable. I just need that action right there. Finally, I want to make sure this updates on the page. So this just updated the data record. I want to make sure it updates the page. And the way to do that is make sure we have page binding set up appropriately. So this is a copy, so it has the tasks. I actually want to, in a couple instances, want to run the page binding specifically when the ideas collection is updated. I can limit it by certain types of things, but I don't care. I just want it to always update if I update the ideas collection in any way. So this field will update automatically when that happens. I also want a couple of things to happen. I want this page to actually listen to a few things because I might end up reordering these categories potentially. So I want to add another data listener. And whenever I change categories, I want to edit it. It's important to know again as well that our data listeners are, or rather this page binding is where we're setting in data. So you can run actually any flow that you want with page binding, or rather with the data listener. So when the data changes in the collection that I've keyed in and it's data that's related to the page I'm looking at, do this action group. Usually it's page binding because you're going to go get the data and then reset it in, but it could be really any action that you want. Like it might be a notification saying, hey, you have a new message. And that might not mean you're doing any data, you're just displaying a notification. So it really can vary, but page binding is just by far the most frequent one that we see. And so by updating the record and then by having a data listener, it's going to notice, hey, you just updated this record. Let's go reset that page and it'll update this 0 or the value that's already there on the page to whatever value that we need it to be. So now we've got our row page set up here. And so that is good. And what we need to do now is add the functionality to add an idea, to add a category.